In the last episode, my brother explained the beginning of Jewish history up to Herod's kingdom of Judea. I will now continue the history from the Jewish diaspora to the re-establishment of Israel. As Israel is at the intersection of Europe, Asia, and Africa, the Jews were under constant siege from many empires, including the Assyrian, Neo-Babylonian, and Seleucid. Most of the time, the Jewish homeland was a subsidiary of those larger empires. Around the time of Christ, the whole Mediterranean rim was ruled by the Roman Empire. For a while, they got along, as King Herod, the great builder, did well in Roman society. But the Jews increasingly did not like the Romans, in part because the Jewish religion notes that God will punish you, your children, and your children's children if you say the name of another god, while the Romans had many gods. The Jews tried to revolt against the Romans but failed. In 66 AD, the Romans besieged the kingdom of Judea and quickly conquered it. They burned down the Second Temple, also known as Herod's Temple. Only the Western Wall remained, and that's where the Jews now go to pray, as it is as close as they can get to their beloved temple. That's why the wall is also known as the Wailing Wall. Despite losing the battle, the Jews kept on fighting against the Romans. After several large-scale rebellions, the last of which was in 136 AD, the Romans expelled all the Jews from their land, and even tried to wipe them from history. The Jewish people spread all over the world to Europe, Asia, and Africa, including the country we are currently in, Morocco. This is known in history as the Great Jewish Diaspora, and it would last for over 1,800 years. We got to visit a site that demonstrated the defiance of the Jews, Masada. This is a 440-meter-tall natural fortress in the desert, southeast of Jerusalem. The only way up is an extremely narrow and steep goat trail. King Herod built a great palace there, just in case he needed to run away from attacks. But mostly, it was a deserted fortress. After the first rebellion, people who wanted to stay near Jerusalem escaped to Masada, thinking they would be safe from the Romans. We don't know what the rebels did that tipped the Romans off, but some say they attacked a passing merchant to collect resources. The Romans began a siege that lasted 9 months. They immediately started to build a ramp from the hillside and taunted their opponents with constant patrols all along the perimeter. Imagine the horror of the Jews who lived inside, watching the slow arrival of inevitable defeat. On the day when the fortress wall was finally rammed open, the Romans decided to return to camp for the night. The next day, when they arrived, they found everyone inside dead, except for 2 women and 3 children. The rebels decided that death was better than enslavement, so they killed their wives and children and drew a lottery to kill each other, as suicide was not permitted by their religion. Masada used to be a symbol of Jewish courage and bravery, but nowadays the cult nature of murdering women and children made it less so. For 1,800 years, the Jews roamed around the world, often being discriminated against for their religion and industriousness. In the late 1800s, a Zionist movement started among the Jews to return to their ancestral home. a key contributor being Moses Montefiore, who built a windmill to start a Jewish settlement outside of the old city of Jerusalem. After the Ottoman collapse, the British took over the land as a colony. The British were sympathetic to the Jewish causes, but also didn't want to anger the Arabs, who helped them during the fight against the Turks. After World War II, the United Nations drew a map to create a Jewish nation alongside with an Arab nation in modern-day Israel, as the British were giving up their control of the area. That's how Israel was founded in 1948. The newly independent Arab nations did not like being told to give up land that they had inhabited for over 1,000 years. So they decided to declare war against Israel. In a museum in the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem, we watched with a heavy heart the story of how the Jews fought to the last bullet against the Jordanian army. We also saw a tunnel built to help the Jews to go from one hilltop to the Temple Mount without getting shot at by the Jordanians. After 20 years of conflict, when the Arab nations became increasingly hostile, the Jews led a successful preemptive attack that concluded with their decisive win in just 6 days. They captured many Arab civilians in the land that they conquered, and those are the current-day Palestinians. The conflict is still going on, and we saw some drastically different conditions of living between the prosperous Israeli cities and the less developed Palestinian areas. It is amazing to us that Jewish identity not only survived, but remained strong after thousands of years of exile. We were also amazed by how the young country of Israel could so quickly develop into prosperity through its people's hard work and through the help of the international community.